Hello everyone, welcome to my first tutorial, and today we will learn how to bake my gluten-free sourdough bread. I call it Alternative Country Loaf. We will need a set of dry and wet ingredients. For the dry ingredients we will need buckwheat flour, brown rice flour, potato starch, arrowroot and salt. For the wet mixture of ingredients, we'll need water, psyllium husk, whole preferably. We will need avocado oil or other neutral oil, for example sunflower, but please choose good quality oil because it will impact the flavor, preferably organic oil. And we will also need our main ingredient, sourdough starter made with brown rice flour. And let's get baking. The first step in making our alternative country bread will be to prepare thick leaven, and we start doing it the night before because it will take 8-9 hours to ferment before adding and mixing the bread dough. So you start with your 100% hydration starter, and we will need 25 grams of this starter. Then we add 40 grams of water, and 60 grams of brown rice flour. And now we mix it thoroughly to get rid of all the dry bits. We need it to be evenly mixed. It will resemble a thick paste. The starter is well mixed. When there are no dry bits, you can turn it around and see the bottom. No dry bits of flour. You just spread it evenly, press a little, so that in the morning you will see how it puffs. And you cover it loosely like that and let it sit overnight. Another important thing to prepare for making alternative sourdough is to make a soaker. So we do it at the same time as the thick leaven, and we will need 11 grams of whole psyllium, grinded slightly. You can see it is much finer than it was. So we add it into the bowl where we're going to make a soaker. Then we will need golden flaxseed. I also prefer using whole and grind it into a fine flaxseed meal. In this case, I know that I'm using very fresh ingredient. You know, flax contains a lot of oils, and if you purchase it ground, it will probably be rancid since it's hard to keep it in good condition. We also grind it, but in this case we grind it very fine. Look how fine it should be. It's almost like a powder. We also add it into a bowl, and now we mix it slightly to incorporate ground flaxseed and ground psyllium husk. And then we need to add 300 grams of water and whisk it immediately. Psyllium husk and ground flaxseed absorb water very fast, so you don't want to have any big chunks of these dry ingredients in your soaker, and let it sit overnight together with your thick leaven. In the morning you will use both in mixing your bread dough. Do not forget to cover your soaker, otherwise you will get a layer of dry film on top. Good night. 8 hours later, my starter looks puffy, and if you look at it on the side, you can see the air pockets, and if you mix it, you will see it is very, very porous and textured. So we have our bowl with a soaker, and we add our starter here. We need to add avocado oil, 55 grams, and we also need to add 8 grams of sugar. And now we attach paddle to our mixer and mix it for 1 minute or 1 minute and a half. While I mix the wet ingredients, I prefer combining the dry ingredients, not to lose time. So we need 165 grams of buckwheat flour, 55 grams of brown rice flour, 12 grams of arrowroot, and 23 grams of potato starch. And finally, we need to add 6 grams of salt. We take a whisk and whisk it to combine them better. It will be easier for us to incorporate dry into wet ingredients when all the dry ingredients are already pre-mixed. So in a minute, our wet ingredients look like that. It's a gelatinized, fluffy mixture. And we add dry ingredients to it all at once and mix it carefully. I prefer to do it in short intervals to avoid sprinkling flour all over the kitchen. In a minute approximately, when the dough is very sticky and not well mixed, add 15 grams of water while mixing. You see I have water in the same container where I had my starter. So we start mixing and we add water. During the process, you need to stop once or twice to scrape the paddle and to mix it well, so that we don't have any dry bits of flour and the mixture is nice and homogeneous. Usually dry bits stick to the paddle a lot. And continue mixing for another 1.5–2 minutes. Now the dough is ready. Again, let's scrape everything into the bowl using a wet scraper. Combine it in a blob of dough. You can leave it to rest for 1 hour or 1.5 hours at room temperature, 72 Fahrenheit. And after that, we'll be shaping. Don't forget to cover your dough to avoid dryness. 1 hour and 30 minutes later, I have the dough ready for shaping. Again, we are using scraper to scrape it out of the bowl on a floured surface. I use seal pad because it's easier to clean. I dust it with brown rice flour and then I flip my dough on the flour. As you see, it looks porous and a bit fluffy. And now we're going to shape it. I always wet my hands because it's easier to handle a gluten-free dough with wet hands. And you spread it into a rectangle, and then you start rolling it into a loaf. You see it is sticky, but with flour it makes it easier to handle. So this is our loaf. Then I use a scraper to transfer it to my hands. It's very sticky, and I have my banetone lined with a cotton towel and sprinkled with brown rice flour, and I put my dough into the banetone. I shape it slightly using my towel. I press it from the sides to form a tighter oval loaf. So it looks like that, maybe a little tighter. And then again, I sprinkle brown rice flour on top. We cover it and we send it into the fridge for approximately 6 hours. In 5 hours and 30 minutes, the bread is ready for baking. You can see how slightly puffed the loaf is. And now we are going to transfer it to parchment. I have it here. Do it carefully in order not to smash it. So this is our loaf of alternative sourdough. You can score it. Try scoring it with small cuts in order for the loaf to hold the shape better. I also like to do some stencils on top to make it look pretty, but it's up to you. You can use only cuts. So let's do the stencil. I also use buckwheat flour for that. And now let's score it. My oven is ready. It is 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and there is a Dutch oven inside. So I'm baking my loaf in the Dutch oven with lid. And once it is loaded in the Dutch oven, I close the lid, close my oven, and reduce the temperature to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for 45 minutes covered with lid. 45 minutes later, we need to open our Dutch oven to release the steam and finish baking our loaf, adding 5 more minutes. Our alternative country loaf is ready. It cracked a bit on top, but it's okay. I think it adds a more rustic look to it. So this is a nice loaf of bread. It's made with gluten-free ingredients, doesn't have any yeast, and you can enjoy it with your family. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the process. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them under the video. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.